Welcome to the Grange podcast, where we strive to rekindle the spirit of community and belonging. Our mission is simple yet profound: to foster transparent communication and share valuable information that brings us closer together. Join us as we explore stories, insights, and conversations with the intent of building a stronger, more connected community, one episode at a time. Today, my guest is Adam Fowler. Adam is a father, husband, avid outdoorsman, and Stevens County Search and Rescue team captain. During our conversation, we talked about the impact our fourth grade teacher had on us by teaching us primitive life skills outside of the classroom setting. We also discussed Adam's role as the Search and Rescue team captain. Topics covered include the importance of having a local search and rescue team, backcountry preparedness, the value of receiving training, the power in a strong community, and the vital role emergency management services play in keeping our rural communities safe. We also discuss a couple of the rescues Adam has been on and lessons learned from the many hours spent in the backcountry. To join Stevens County Search and Rescue, visit www.stevenscountywa.gov. Meetings are held on the first Thursday of each month from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Colville Ambulance Building. If you find value in our conversation, please help spread the word by sharing this podcast with a friend. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button to be notified when a new episode is released. If you're interested in coming on the podcast, you can reach out to thegrangepodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's my conversation with Adam Fowler. All right, we are live. The Grange Podcast 007 with Adam Fowler. Adam, welcome to the Grange.
Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, appreciate you coming in. Adam's another one that reached out to me probably a month and a half ago. Had listened to the podcast. We were just talking offline. Kind of popped into his feed randomly, and he heard it and checked it out, and actually had reached out to me. And Adam's part of the local Stevens County Search and Rescue program, and had reached out and said, hey, if you want to learn more about search and rescue, I'd love to come on. And I thought I would love to learn more about search and rescue. I know nothing about it, but before we dive into that, man, maybe give me just a little bit of history, where you grew up, maybe some hobbies, interests, and how it was being raised here in Kettle Falls in Stevens County.
Yeah, so, well, first of all, thanks for having me. And actually, I brought you a gift.
No way.
So I figured, I saw your studio, and so I figured you needed to get a Velcro wall or something. You can start putting patches on, or challenge
Awesome.
coins or whatever. So that's the one that I carry on my bag. So now it's yours.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
So yeah, born in Colville, grew up in Kettle my whole life. Never really went anywhere else other than vacations and trips, and yeah, and didn't really want to leave.
Yeah.
Either, I think the furthest away from home I've ever been was Juarez, Mexico, when I was a kid. Yeah.
What was in Juarez?
Nothing.
Was it a family vacation?
Yeah, so we went down. We have some family in New Mexico. We went down and saw them, and then bopped across the border, and it's pretty eye-opening. Yeah, for a young kid. I still think about it. I kind of joke with my mom sometimes that she was trying to get rid of me, but it is what it is. But no, yeah, man, never really wanted to leave. I like it. I like the small town. And
yeah, is it safe to say that you've always been into the outdoors, like even from a young age?
Oh yeah, since day one. My dad, he's one of the best woodsmen that I know, and I just grew up doing it. I mean, even I didn't have a choice necessarily. I mean, hit the ground running. I think I got my first recurve bow when I was 2.
Wow.
I think so. and it was out shooting targets with Dad, and yeah, the rest is history there. I mean,
so was your first introduction to the backcountry, was it hunting, or was it
a little bit. We did a lot of ATV riding when I was a kid. Well, actually, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think your dad was the first one. He got me a little snowmobile when I was a kid.
I forgot about that.
And so we used to ride around, the dump flats and everywhere else. And then that just kind of morphed into four-wheelers and all of that. So we'd go hit up all the trails on Sherman and everywhere else. And that's kind of what started it.
Okay.
Passed hunter safety and then started hunting. I was never a really good rifle hunter. I tried and tried for years, and I finally asked my dad. He kept bringing home deer with a bow, and I'm like, what gives, man? Like, I want to start bow hunting. And so when I was 13, he finally let me. I think I could hold still long enough, and we had a pretty bumpy road the first part of the season, but right at the end, I finally capitalized on a little 3-point, and I was hooked.
Is that right?
Yeah, I was hooked since.
And you've bow hunted since then?
Yeah, back and forth.
Okay.
When Jay and I started having kids, I'd buy a rifle tag, and then like we would go out when we could. And then the kids got older and started wanting to go hunting and stuff. So like, yeah, I'd buy a rifle tag and kind of went there. But the past probably, I don't know, 10 years, I dove back into it.
Gotcha.
Pretty hard. And so that was kind of the catalyst. I mean, the ATV things kind of started it, but hunting was the catalyst to be in the woods.
Yeah.
So
it seems like, with we get to listen to all these podcasts, and I'm sure you and I kind of tune into the same circles, but like probably definitely in the last 5 years, it seems like bow hunting's off the chain. Like it's the new thing, right?
Oh yeah, man, yeah. It is. And I think what really started it, man, was just my opinion, was when COVID hit.
Yeah.
Everybody was locked up. Nobody was doing anything. Everybody was learning new stuff. And I mean, it was growing. It was definitely growing. But after COVID, it was like, you go to the woods now and it's almost like rifle season.
For sure.
Yeah.
So. When I was researching just a little bit about search and rescue, preparing for this podcast, I'd read an article. It was actually published in New York, but their post-COVID search and rescue calls went up like 30% because there were so many more outdoor recreational users because of COVID.
I 100%
so then the search and rescues calls, just kept increasing, which I hadn't thought about that. But it did seem like for those 2 years, you couldn't see, there was no four-wheelers for sale. There was no campers. I snowmobile and split board, and parking lots were full every weekend. Like, people decided, which is good. On one hand, it's good that people got outside. On the other hand, it's like, it was nice to not see everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
so yeah, that's what started it. And then, you've talked about him on this podcast before, but I'm going to bring him up again. Mr. Morgan's 4th grade. I mean, that took it to a different level.
Yeah.
Like I said, my dad, he's one of the best woodsmen that I know. But getting into his class, then I really got broke down with the primitive side of things. Like, I remember having a deer hide out there you could go and scrape, and it was obviously a different time. Like, it wasn't 2025, but each one of his classes would build a muzzleloader.
Yeah.
And then he would donate it to the local mission down here and put it on display. Well, we'd go out in the yard there at school, put in blanks and shoot them, when we got done. And there was just a ton of stuff that he did that kind of, I think I still have my flint and steel kit from his class.
I do too.
Do you?
Yep. And the cool thing with that was that we also then sewed the pouch, right, that you stored it in, and that was out of the deer hide that we tanned.
Yep.
And then it was like a pass-fail thing. Like, you had to be able to make a fire with your flint and steel. Yep. And I remember I had an Altoids can that had tinder in it, and then I had my flint and steel in the leather pouch that I'd sewed from the hide that we tanned. And then it was a competition too, right?
Yeah, like, who could get it done fastest.
And if you got it done fastest, then you'd like get to eat first, or you got like preferential treatment if you were a stud.
Yeah, nothing's for free, man.
Yeah.
Nothing's for free. You got to work for it. So Yeah, that was great.
Dude, on that real quick, I still have my class picture from Morgan's class, and the gun that we built my year was, you probably remember, but it was a 90 caliber British wall gun. Dude, it was 4 feet long. And in our class picture, the front 5 kids have that gun sitting on their lap, and it spans all their laps.
I 100% believe it.
Isn't that wild?
Yep.
And every kid had sweat equity into that gun.
Yep. Polishing brass, inletting the wood, whatever it was.
And nothing was forced. It wasn't like there was tears, or it wasn't even an issue.
Nope.
And it was something that we looked, I remember, I didn't like school particularly, math, science, whatever. I looked forward to getting that done to then be able to go work on those activities.
Yep.
I think it's great to be able to touch back on Mr. Morgan. I actually just did my dad's dog, that red lab that you just saw outside. The breeder is Mr. Morgan's brother.
Oh, really?
And so last week I had my dad reach out to him and get Dwight's number, and I'm going to reach out to him and see if I can get him on here.
Good. I hope he does.
Yeah.
I hope he does. That'll be a good one. I really do.
It'd be killer. I think it's important too, or it'd be fun just to touch real quick on the camp out, right?
Yep.
That was the kind of the culmination. So to Adam's point, like, we're in 4th grade for our listeners who don't know Mr. Morgan at Kettle Falls. And it was a primitive class, and school came first. Like, and he did hold a very high standard and bar, but outside of that, we got to learn these primitive skills, and it was awesome. We were outside of the classroom. We were working with our hands. We were understanding things, and then it all capped into being able to stay in a teepee overnight on the school grounds and have a camp out, sleeping on a cot, sleeping bag. We ate buffalo tongue and the best rolls out of a Dutch oven that I've ever had in my life.
Oh, yeah.
Like venison steak, backstrap. The dude could cook.
Yeah, he could, man. And
out of a Dutch oven.
I remember having oxtail soup. And I think in the camp out, I stayed in a British Walton, I think. Actually, a story that I still remember. Like, it's weird how you remember things, but I got in trouble on that camp out for spitting watermelon seeds. And he nicknamed me the Phantom Spitter. So, but no, it was really good. And it was motivating to your point about, a 4th grade kid, man. You don't like math. You don't like spelling tests. You don't like whatever. But if you can get it done, you get to be involved in these activities. And I think one of the biggest things is the activities that he was doing, man. They were like good, wholesome activities.
Yeah.
Things that I have definitely taken to my life now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that, like I said, between my dad and him, that was the catalyst that put me in the woods.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a great motivation tool. I remember throwing tomahawks.
Oh, yeah.
Man, behind the school.
Yep.
Like, he had a big log out there, and you could go out there and throw tomahawks. Like,
yeah.
You imagine that today?
No
way.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I don't remember a single person ever getting hurt.
No.
Nothing. You're out there with metal tools, scraping deer hides and throwing tomahawks and everything that went involved. And flint and steel, man. Nobody burnt the school down. Nobody.
We kept that in our backpack. Like, once we learned, and that was ours then.
Yeah.
And you kept it on you. Right. And, in my opinion, he was professional, and, he ran a classroom. He was the leader of it.
Yeah.
And he had parameters, and he ran it well, in my opinion. And at a young age, learned work ethic, and then also these life skills that you probably use on this search and rescue thing. That was such an awesome experience. Like, we're very fortunate to have had him as a teacher. Like,
and when I was a firearms instructor, coach, instructor, whatever you want to label it, I seeked him out quite a bit because he was very involved with the trap shooting world, and he helped me along the way a little bit, and that was in my adult life.
Yeah.
So he's always been around.
Yep.
I'll put it that way. Like, he's always been around.
Yeah. Well, and how much time and effort has he spent at the historical center? Like, I ran into him last year at Sandy's, and he had just got done doing a 3-day something down there where he was dressed up as a mountain man and doing the whole hands-on deal. And like,
it was the fur trading event.
Yeah.
I took the kids down there and stuff, and back to the primitive survival thing. Yeah. He was helping with all of that. All the time. That is the answer, is all the time. He's in it.
Do you remember a guy named Fiddlin' Red?
Was that the guy that came into the school?
Yeah.
Was he the guy that made soap?
He was Mr. Morgan's friend.
Yeah.
And he had this red beard.
Yep.
I'll show you later. Over there, I just found a picture of Fiddlin' Red at the historical center that my grandma had taken. I was going through some of my grandma's stuff, and there's a picture of Fiddlin' Red there. But he was a friend of Morgan. And then we actually, I was a kid, but the log catch that we operate at China Bar, I'll have to have my dad on and have him tell the story sometime. But the way that I remember it is they found a cedar canoe. Like it got loose from him upriver somewhere, and it floated into the debris bag, and it ended up being, and I don't know this dude's real name, just always knew him as Fiddlin' Red. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was the first time I ever saw soap being made, and I think it's kind of funny, like full circle. Now my wife makes soap.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
It is funny how things happen. But yeah, I do remember him. He came in and did a presentation on mountain man stuff when we were in class.
Yep. Shout out Fiddlin' Red.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Well, yeah. But the main reason that we're on here is you're involved in search and rescue. And like I said, when you reached out, I just don't know much about it. I think there's value, to our listeners, and I'm still growing this listener base, if you will, but being that, the intent of this podcast is to try to share information and valuable information at that. Like, I'm going to give you the floor just to kind of talk about search and rescue. And then I've got a handful of questions, that I'll ask, but maybe just give us the 10,000 foot view and then we can dive into it.
Okay. So I guess the quick story is I wanted to do something. Like I was going stir crazy.
What year is this?
This would have been, it probably started in 2020.
Okay.
So I was a millwright by trade. I don't do that anymore, but, working graveyard shift, tired all the time, like raising kids, all of that. Like your time's pretty delicate.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I wanted to do something. So I started looking at fire, like, talking to like Gary Axtell, he'd come down to the place I used to work and put out fires all the time, and we'd help him and stuff. And I was like, yeah, dude, I can do this gig. My dad was a firefighter. So I was at a barbecue with some friends, and we were talking, and I was like, well, I think I'm going to go in and maybe get on board here and think about joining fire. And it was just weird, man, how things happen. Like an hour later, he's scrolling through some social media platform, whatever, and he goes, hey, man, have you seen this? And I said, what's that? And he goes, well, the sheriff and the dive team are trying to put together a search and rescue team. And so by this point, it was 2021.
Okay.
And I was like, no kidding. So I read through the little deal they wrote up, and I was like, well, this is definitely down my alley. Like, there ain't a road around here I don't know, and I'm definitely hold my own in the sticks. So I talked to my wife about it, and I was like, hey, is this something you want to do? She goes, yeah, I'll go check it out. And so we went to the first meeting, and I didn't know what to expect, man. Like I didn't know anybody. I just bopped in there, and I was like, well, all right, I've got some medical training, some TCCC. So for the listeners, that's tactical combat casualty care, and stop the bleed classes, and then your basic first aid. And so I'm also a ham radio operator. And then prior to COVID, I was actually working for a group, and we taught wilderness survival classes. And so I had a resume there in it. Well, I walked in this room, man, and started listening. The very first thing we did is everybody stands up, and you had basically, 2 minutes, whatever, something quick, tell everybody about yourselves, whatever. And it's not that I had a big head, but it was like, this is definitely more down my alley than fire. Well, I'm sitting there, and then like the second guy that stands up's like, yeah, I'm a SEER instructor at Fairchild. I'm like, oh. So I'm listening, and the other guy's like, yeah, I'm a boat captain from Alaska. however many years, I build radios for fun. And
Nice.
I'm like, I'll move down the line. And I think there was a guy there at the beginning that was a Air Force pararescueman. And I'm like, wow, okay, I'm amongst giants.
You're eating humble pie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And so got up, name's Adam, and this is what I do. And I know enough about radios to get me in trouble. And I can patch a hole if it's in you, and so on and so forth. Well, we really enjoyed it. I liked I liked their mission. I liked what they were doing, and it fit into what I wanted to do. I wanted to do something to help my community. And so like, I don't want to get too political here.
Yeah.
But like, we all vote, we all do our due diligence, to try to make the best choices we can. But my opinion, I found out pretty quick, like, the best change that you can do is by doing it with your community and locally. As long as your family's in line and your friends are in line and everything around you, your shit's covered.
Yeah.
Once that's covered, reach out. And if you can start doing stuff, man, and if that's coaching your daughter's softball team, or it's a football coach, wrestling coach, getting the little guys together to wrestle or whatever they're into, volleyball. If you can start helping your community, you're making it better. It might not seem like it, but you are. And so that was the way that we reached out, and Jay and I did it both. We went in, it was really good. There wasn't much going on. It was mostly introductions, and they were explaining that the sheriff had come to the dive team and asked them, hey, we're getting missing people. We're having, an issue with this. We're kind of short-staffed with deputies wise, and I'd like to put together a land-based search and rescue team. And so the dive team headed up. William Emily, I think Wayne Walls was a part of that. Neil Ensign, he was part of that. Who else? I think, give me a second here. Lynn Miner was a part of that. And these guys were all kind of dudes that were on the dive team. Right. And so they just put out a public service announcement basically saying, hey, we need people, and showed up. They kind of ran the show for a minute, and we started taking votes. It was like one meeting after maybe two meetings. We meet once a month. And so things started rolling. They started voting in members for board positions so we could start making decisions on what direction we want this team to go, and kind of rules to live by, rules to play by, that kind of thing. And throughout the whole thing, I thought it was good. I thought it was a good organization, and they needed people, and like, who wants to be on the board? Well, no way. Well, when it finally came down to it, I was like, well, I can be an officer position. Like, I'll check it out. So out of all these guys, like, I got voted in as a board member, and I remember thinking, wow, like, this is a real deal now. It's not messing around the woods with your friends anymore. Like, you're going to be going after people that are hurt, injured, stuck, lost, all the above. And our captain, so our old captain, if you're listening to this, we totally threw you under the bus, but, he was former military, and he was a SEER instructor. And I was like, hey, that guy should be the captain, And so he took the job, and he did a phenomenal job of it. He built the framework, built a foundation, got us a lot of training through Fairchild and their SEER program. And I think it's the 336 training squadron. Don't quote me on that. I'm not sure, but they'd come out and get us squared away with what we needed to know with land navigation, survival, even some bare bones medical stuff.
Will you really quick, just for the listeners that may not know, tell them what SEER means?
Oh, so SEER is survive, evade, resist, and escape. And it's a military program. I think all branches have it, and I could be totally wrong there. But I know that the Air Force is kind of the ones they put it on a pedestal. And it's kind of a weird deal too, because you can come in as enlisted and you're going to be training officers. And so it's kind of a weird deal that they got there. But I can tell you just from the experience, the survival training that those guys can provide is next level. It's the best that I have ever experienced, is to classes that I've been to or things that I've done with other people. They are squared away. And so they'll come out, they'll help us with trainings. And
so you're saying that one of your members at Search and Rescue is a prior SEER instructor.
Yeah.
So he's connected, and then you guys are able to receive training kind of in coordinates with the SEER program, essentially. Yeah. That's awesome.
And I actually, right now we have 2 that are former.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I went to the first training and I was like, this is legit. Like, this is not a bunch of rednecks and pickups looking for somebody.
And I guess, just so I'm being transparent with you, that's what I have Search and Rescue in my head as being, like, kind of, the Muppet Show shows up to a scene. And I'm not, I mean, I appreciate anyone that volunteers on any level. So I'm not trying to kick anyone in the nuts here.
Yeah,
but just because of lack of involvement or whatever, we've just seen on small levels in these rural areas that it can be a Muppet Show sometimes.
Yeah.
And so because I've never had this conversation, I've just assumed that that's maybe what we're dealing with. But you're saying just the opposite.
Yeah, and it really is.
Yeah.
And it really is the opposite. It's kind of hard to explain. It's not that they're not holding anybody to this super high speed standard, that's crazy. You could be in a wheelchair and you are an asset to Search and Rescue.
Gotcha.
Like, you can man a radio, you can work in IC. There's a ton of stuff that you can do. And so if anybody's thinking about joining or want to help their community or whatever, like, just because, maybe you got a bum arm or a bum leg, that doesn't matter. You don't have to be in the field. And we'll get into more of that down the road. But so, yeah, it took off from there. And we roll on 2-year elections. So we'll have a board member seat, a treasurer, and a secretary. Was actually this year. And so next year will be 2 more board members and myself as the captain. You rotate through, or you'll have an election, right? And so if somebody wants to step down, or somebody's like wants to challenge a position, and I say challenge for lack of a better term, it's just, if somebody wants that spot, and then the team votes, and if you get voted in, then that's where you're at. And so it came around to the captain position last year. Well, in 2023, it came around. I think in November is when we hold our first set of elections, and our captain was stepping down at the time. He had built a basis and got it up and going, and then he needed to step away, and I kind of got pushed and prodded and asked, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you should do this. No, I don't want to. No, you should really do this. And okay, I'll do it. And so I got nominated, and I've been the captain since January 1st of 2024.
Nice. And what exactly are the roles of that position?
Oh man, a lot. So one of the very first things, and I had talked to this with a member prior, was I appointed a training officer. And so what that did, it took about half the work off the captain by having a training officer that could set up training, set up dates, see where we're lacking, see what needs worked on, reaching out to people and, hey, can you come teach a class, but training, and then the rest is the day-to-day movement. So we work under Department of Emergency Management here in Stevens County, and also the Sheriff's Department. So Brad Mankey. So at the end of the day, Department of Emergency Management and Brad are kind of my boss, for lack of a better term. Working with them, getting things squared away with what we need, equipment wise, or financially, training, any of that. going out on call outs, I've been called at 2 a.m. like, hey, this is a weird one. What's your opinion on this? What do you think we should do? And two minds think better than one, right? So you just it's overseeing the whole show, watching members and trying to get people in, and just like right now on a podcast, talking about it, getting that out there. And you're right. There's a lot of people that just think it's, the Bubbas out there with their Ford pickups, lifted Toyotas out raising hell, looking for somebody. And it couldn't be further from the truth. Like, it's a complete opposite,
I think something else too that I realized when I was working with the school on some of the safety stuff is there's this false fallacy of that I think a lot of us experience from living here our whole lives, and many of us multi-generational. You kind of think you know everything as far as how the city operates on a city level, and then kind of even on a county level, just because you've been here forever. Mm-hmm. I didn't understand that we had emergency response team at the county, or whatever that term was that you just used.
Department of Emergency Management, DEM,
Yeah. I didn't understand we had that even. So like when I was working, with the school and that, I started realizing like, I don't understand exactly what all of our elected officials are, what they do. And then on top of that, the different programs that we have. And hopefully, with having this conversation, we can start to get that. Because like I said, I've been here since the Mayflower. I'm six generations deep here.
Yeah.
And so I think that a lot of the frustration, that I think, and I'm speaking out of hand, but when you don't get the numbers maybe to show up and the actual boots on the ground, I do think that there's this thing that people just don't know.
Right.
And it's hard to get the word out in a small community. So I guess I just wanted to touch on that like there's, hopefully this provides a platform to be able to get people exposed to things I didn't even know about. Mm-hmm. That I think I just had this, like I said, this false fallacy that I kind of understand how everything works. And that couldn't have been further from the truth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fine moving parts here that you just don't know if you don't know where to look, and, sounds like kind of similar to you. Like you didn't really understand or know all that was going on until you essentially got off the couch and went to your first meeting.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, wow, there's a whole thing here. So there's power in getting involved, right?
There is, like I said before, like it really felt like, wow, man, like I'm amongst giants. Like these guys have done some shit.
Yeah.
Like I said, we got members from every branch, from multiple levels. We have, Navy, we have Air Force, we have Marines, we got a couple Marines, we have I think 1 or 2 Army, and they are all from different walks of life, different whatever. And to add to that point too, and what I tell everybody, like kind of my closest friends, I'm gonna go ahead and say it on here, is like anybody that's watching this, like they understand the political divide we are in, right? I don't care if it's at your work, at your school, at your place of entertainment, whatever. There's a divide. This has been the only thing that I have been involved with where there has been absolutely zero divide politically or beliefs or views or whatever. And I think it is a beautiful thing, man, because we have people from every walk of life, and they can come there, and we are all there for the same reason.
That's awesome.
And so that was mind blowing to me in this day and age, like 2025. That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's great.
But to piggyback what you said earlier, like you can get spun out on mainstream politics all day long, and you're probably not going to move the needle, but get involved in your local community, and you then get to be a part of change, and then that's where it starts, It's, like you and I I said the same thing with Ashley last week. Like we don't really have power to move the needle on this big level. So let's wipe it off the table.
Right.
And let's look locally right in front of us, and that's hard because then it creates accountability, and then you have to show up and you kind of got to put your money where your mouth is, and I'm excited. I feel like our generation spent maybe more time on the couch than we should have. And I don't think it was because of ill intent. I just don't know if it was, I don't know exactly, can't put my thumb on it, but when you look back 2 generations, you know, like the AV brothers in this community, you know, and the different people and the names, the last names that we know that built, you know, Happy Dale Park, the Kettle Falls Pool, you know, these different things like that. We used to have a Lions Club, right? My grandpa was part of the Lions Club.
I remember I played for their baseball team.
Yeah. And then there was a Lady Lions Club. And remember when we used to have PTO or PTA, like the parent teacher meetings? And, you know, we had this whole thing, and it's what I've talked about on here a couple times, but the silo effect has happened over years where everyone's operating in these compartmentalized silos. And I think now in our generation, now that we have kids, I think that's probably, if I could put my thumb on it, in our 20s, we were kind of morons and really focused on self.
Well, yeah, who isn't?
Yeah. You know, but now that we have kids, it's like, oh, well, we got to leave this place better than we found it. And we're looking around and saying, okay, well, that's going to take to what Ashley said, you got to roll your sleeves up then and show up.
That's right.
It's not always policy or, you know, you and I arguing until we're red in the face on politics. It's show up in your community and say, let's leave this place better than we found it. And in doing so, we're going to teach our kids that value too. So then hopefully our kids are here and raising a family when we're gone. And that continues, right? And that has that snowball effect. And I guess I feel that duty, and what makes this a beautiful place is the generations before us that did just that, you know, that showed up and invested their time and money into this area to make it good for us.
Absolutely.
You know, you look at the opportunities we were afforded, you know, Pop Warner football or 4-H, shooting track, you know, all these things that we were able to do, the swimming pool, that was so important for us as youth growing up here. How many games were played at Happy Dale Park? You know, you and I aren't skateboarders, but that was huge for a lot of kids too, right?
Sure it was.
And so I think that we're now able to see with some clarity that we have families of our own of, okay, it's time for us to put our shift in, you know?
Yeah, man. And so I think too that, like with family, I'm not saying that I had to live up to what my family did, but to put it into perspective, and I've talked to a few people about this. So I've pretty much worked in the timber industry ever since I got out of high school, right? That is our industry here, right? I've seen all works of life, you know, the guy missing fingers and he's a hard worker and all that, you know. But when you look back, like I've worked with some, you know, 18, 19, 20-year-old kids, and I'm picturing it because what I picture is, so my grandfather was in the Marine Corps in World War II, and he landed on Green Beach on Iwo Jima, and he made it. He survived. Now, I haven't done anything even close to that, not even close, but I look at this kid that can't prop a broom up against the wall, man, and I'm like, you know, what happened? Where did it go sideways, right? So I don't want that to happen with the people around me, my community, my children, any of that. So if you can set a good example and do something that is maybe selfless or putting yourself second, it'll give you a lot of clarity.
And gratification.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's huge, right?
Yeah.
It's a rewarding endeavor when you're doing something bigger than self.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. I love that. How many members are in search and rescue right now?
So it fluctuates. I want to say I don't have the records on me. I should have brought some stuff. I want to say there's somewhere in the ballpark around 30-ish, give or take. And like I said, it fluctuates. People come and go. They move from the community. People show up. But I want to say it's somewhere in the 30s.
Gotcha.
At the moment, yeah.
What's the average number if you guys get a call? What's the average number that are able to show up?
Ooh, so that also depends. You know, you get a call on a Wednesday night at 2 a.m. when people got to get kids off to school the next day, or they have, you know, everybody has a 9 to 5. This is all volunteer, so we don't get paid a dime. Most of the equipment and the kit that we're using is all bought from us. You know, it's all our personal stuff. So I've seen as little as 5 show up immediately to a call, be the first ones out, you know, in the rainstorm in the middle of the night going. And we've rolled down the road in a complete convoy before of 20 plus people. So it really depends. But if I had to say average, I would say within that first 4 to 5 hour block of a missing person, I would say close to 7. Gotcha. Would probably be the original. And then people are going to trickle in as they get off work, or, they wake up and, oh man, I had an alert, or whatever, or they're getting back to town from a trip or what have you.
Yep. God, I just had something that I lost in my brain on that. Give me a minute. Is it funded at all on the county level?
Yes. There's different platforms that we use, and it's not nationwide. Well, it is nationwide depending on the team, whether they want to do it, but CalTopo, if you're familiar with CalTopo. So it's a mapping service. It's like Onyx, just way more detailed.
Okay.
You can see the slope, where to land a helicopter.
Is that what the firefighters use?
I don't know. I don't know.
I've seen Strobel showed me stuff that he uses in fire that's way better than what I'm getting on Onyx.
And it could be. But you have a subscription to that for search and rescue teams, and then they have a platform that's specifically for like SAR, land-based search and rescue. Like I said, it'll give you the slope for where to land a helo, what the wind's doing, sun exposure, the whole nine. And so you got a yearly bill for that. We operated off of like a one call now system for a while, where you could just type out a message, hit enter, and boom, it went out to everybody on the team to their cell phones, right? You had to pay for that subscription. And then like equipment, we got a ambulance set up for our IC, which is incident command, and we needed comms for it. And so we had a budget, and we got radios, antennas.
Do you get an annual budget that says you get X amount of money to spend on what you see fit per year from the county?
Yeah.
And is that pretty marginal?
It is, and it fluctuates.
Okay.
Again, back to the politic thing, it definitely fluctuates, but most of it, I would say a good 80% comes out of our own pockets.
Gotcha.
Your survival kit, your rain gear, your land nav equipment, things of that sort. Even most of us run our own radios.
Yeah.
So it's pretty much all volunteer, and it comes out of our pocket. But the bigger things, and there's a lot of multi-county. Well, we just got a Zodiac, right? A Zodiac, a trailer, and a motor, so that we can work kind of a lot of water around here, right?
Yeah.
And I don't remember what county that came from, and I feel bad for not remembering. But yeah, they gave us a Zodiac.
Cool.
And so that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge for us. And we're relatively new. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I think Pend Oreille's, I want to say Pend Oreille's search and rescue team started in the 70s or something, man.
Wow.
And I don't know when Ferry County's was, but we are new.
Okay.
And before we had what we have now, we had ESAR, which was I don't know a lot of details about it, but it was kids volunteer, not like Boy Scouts, but it was the youth would go out and look for missing people. And the way that I understand it from the people that were there, it just kind of dissolved, lack of interest, and so then here we showed up.
Gotcha. What kind of training, how many training events are you guys doing annually?
So it depends. I think the best way to do it would be monthly.
Okay.
We have a monthly meeting once a month, and we'll always do some kind of training the first hour in there, and most of it's tabletop. Then you'll go into your normal meeting of introducing new people, trainings that we have coming up, events we're doing, any problems, anything's going on, debriefs from searches that we went on, things of that sort. Then we have a FTX, which is a field training exercise once a month with a member who puts on. It started out as a land nav hike. So for a lot of people that might not understand fully, land navigation is one of the hardest things to lock down. There's a lot that goes into it. And when we're talking about nighttime map and compass, you know, and a protractor out there finding your location and navigating, like it can get rough. We're so dependent on GPSs and cell phones, and I've actually been on searches where my cell phone wasn't working and my GPS was just squirrely, man, because of minerals in the ground or whatever was going on. And I've had to rely in the middle of the night on a compass and a map, you know? And so we try to keep everybody as fresh as we can on that. Well, he would take people out and, you know, if you need some extra work, you need some extra help, you want to go for a hike in the woods, like, let's go.
Yeah.
And so that kind of morphed into a monthly FTX field training,
a more
exercise.
Formal. Yeah.
We're diving in, we're doing medical now. We're doing, a little bit of survival stuff here and there, but it's all kind of just conforming together. So we have that. And then quarterly, we will do a big FTX.
Okay.
And those ones that's where we get like, the Air Force Bubbas come out and they help. National Guard will come out.
Do you have other county search and rescue? Are they part of that as well?
Yes. So
you guys kind of team up on those quarterly ones?
So we'll send out invites, and if members want to come, they can. The biggest counties that we work with hand in hand are Pend Oreille and Ferry. And we have members of our team of Stevens County that are also members of Ferry. We have members that are a part of Spokane County, you know, and so we try to invite them to any trainings that we have, and they're pretty good about inviting us to anything they got going on, you know. So that's the big ones. Those are 2-day events on a weekend. Some of us will get there on a Friday night, kind of help set up, do what we need to do, get the curriculum going, and then we hit the ground running on Saturday with whatever's in that training pipeline, and go through the whole list of things that we want to train. That night, we just kind of team bonding, right? Like we'll hang out by a fire and tell Bigfoot stories or whatever. And then when we wake up in the morning the next day, whatever it was that we learned the day before, we'll put that to use on a mock mission.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of times, like, we'll bring our children out, we'll bring our kids out, you know, and make them be a missing person, right? So that we're not pulling a member away from the team and they can go out and be found or whatever. So
nice. And I was looking at your guys' Facebook page, and it looks like you just did a winter weekend training at Pierre or something.
Yep.
That looked pretty neat.
So unfortunately, well, I guess it is fortunate. I missed this one because my oldest made it to state for wrestling. So
awesome.
that was pretty cool. But yeah, they did a good job. And we do that every year. We'll hit up somewhere and go sleep in the snow.
Cool.
You know? And it's not all hardcore, you know, like if you want to bring a camper, by all means bring a camper. But get out and snowshoe, you know, building fires in snowy conditions when it's pissing down rain, you know, and learn that those are the times that you need to train that survival.
Yeah.
So
do you have rough idea of annual calls that search and rescue gets? Man,
it depends. So we work with, like I said, we work hand in hand too with the other counties. So I think the last search we went on was actually in Pend Oreille. And it really does just depend year to year. Summertime, usually more than in the wintertime. The first year we started, so it'd be like 2021. We had quite a few. I don't know off the top of my head, but there was a good 4 or 5 call outs. And then there's other things too that go on that aren't necessarily missing people. Like we went out for an evidence search one time, helping with the sheriff's department find a piece of evidence that was used in a crime, you know. We'll go retrieve things for people, you know, if you lost a boat trailer or you whatever, we'll go out and use that as a mission. Also kind of training and again, just kind of helping your community, right? So it depends, man. That first year we had quite a few, and then as COVID kind of trickled away and everybody went back to work, it kind of started a downhill decline a little bit, but you just never know. Yeah. I mean, you could get a call right now and I'd have to split, you know? So, and it seems like it comes in waves. It'll be like stagnant. Bam, we get a call. And then you're just getting home, you get back to work the next day, whatever. The next day, bam, another one. And then it'll be stagnant for a while. And then,
is there a call that's more common than others? You know, like elderly person lost in the woods, or like, do you get a call that's the bulk of what you guys see?
So if I had to pick one, it'd be mental health.
Oh, okay.
It'd be, you know, the elderly people, medications messed up or whatever, and they go walkabout, right? And so that has been quite a few of them.
Yeah,
that we've been on. Yeah.
What about, you know, if you're good to share it, if not, it's cool. But do you have like one of your most memorable calls that you've been to? Like, can you outline that?
So I have a funny one, and I have one that's kind of sad. So
okay.
I guess I'll tell them both. Like, so the funny one first, we'll do that one, I guess. We got a call, and I can't go too much into detail, but it was out of county, and we went up there, and the family was there, obviously, right? And so this family member was missing, and we're searching, and we ended up coming back the next day to help. And the family asked, like, can we go with you? Like, yeah. And so we will take on spontaneous volunteers as well, right? Part of our rules are like, yeah, you know, you're cleared, you're good. Stay with the SAR team, and, you know, make sure the team leader's aware of it, and we'll take them because, you know, more eyes, better chance, right?
Yeah.
So they got attached to our team, and we're out walking around, and we stopped, get hydrated, just kind of took a break for a second, you know, and this family, I think the best way I could say it, the family wasn't from here.
Gotcha.
We'll put it that way. And so I sat down, getting some water, just kind of taking a quick fiver, you know, making sure everybody's getting hydrated and kind of regrouping on our maps and stuff. And I pulled out a Cliff Bar. I started eating it, and one of the family members kind of looked at me, and he's like, "Are you hungry?" I'm like, "No, man, I just keep the energy up. Yeah. You know, we're out here hiking." And he goes, "You're hungry?" And I said, "No, I'm just eating to keep." He goes, "That's not food. I'll go get you food." And he turned around, man. He was going to hike like 2 miles back to like where we started to go get me real food. I'd like stop him. I was like, "No, man, like just chill, stay with us." You know? And so the day went on, and we made it back to our, like IC point or whatever. And we were being shuttled from the IC, the incident command, to the search area. And so there was like a mini IC at that search area. Well, we got down to that mini IC, and we were calling for a rig to come and get us. And he just walked out, and he was like, "I'll give you a ride home." And I'm like, "No, it's okay, man. Like, my vehicle's here. It's just whatever." But that one was always comical to me because like we eat so much trash, and he's like, "I'll go get you some real food." Yeah. Like Cliff Bar, man.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
So it was one of those deals like you'd have to be there, I guess. Yeah. But it was very comical after the fact. That one was pretty funny. And then another pretty memorable one was there was a missing person, and we found them on day 2, and they were on death's doorstep. It was pretty bad.
Was it backcountry? Like, were you guys deep in the woods?
No, okay. It was actually half urban. And so those ones are always kind of spooky ones to me too, because, you know, you're going around knocking on people's doors. You know, people live in the country for a reason. Yeah. Right.
Well, it's weird in my brain when I initially think search and rescue, I'm thinking backcountry wilderness.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's something to touch on. That's not all the calls.
No, and a lot of them are like half urban.
Gotcha.
Right? Because somebody just walked away from their home, or went to a cabin, you know, somewhere around a lake or somewhere, something, you know, and then just split, you know, went for a hike or whatever the case may be. And so there's other residents around, you know. But I think that was the closest I've ever seen anyone to dying without passing over. Like, And we have such a great team, man. Like, we have people on our team that are medically qualified beyond belief. And so I just remember getting on the radio, and getting them up there, and Jaya was working, I was working, the rest of the team was working, and we brought this gal back. And that was huge. That was, I'd always kind of flirted with like Christianity. And after that day, like, I was hook, line, and sinker. Whatever was going on there, like, people can think it's corny, people can think whatever they want. I quite frankly don't care, but there was a bigger, higher power there helping us that day, because I've never seen somebody that close that stayed alive.
And were they close to passing, like, from like the elements?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Huh.
And so that one's probably the most memorable, because it was like that. There was one prior to that where we found a person, a family member, just come up and like gave me a great big hug. Never seen this person in my life, never, whatever. And that's when I knew, like, okay, I am making a difference.
Yeah.
Because that person gets to see, their father again, or their mother again, or their daughter again, or their son again, or whatever. And I was a small part of that effort to make that happen. And so, yeah, when you come back, like, everybody's emotions are different. Everybody handles it different. There was tears shed. There was high fives. Once everything settled down, everybody's on cloud nine that we were able to make it work. And I probably shouldn't even say this. Like, I don't even want to put it in the atmosphere. So I'm going to knock on your awesome table here. But our county, in the short time that we've been here, we're 100%.
Oh, wow.
And so, unfortunately, that number will probably change someday.
Yeah.
But as of the moment, everybody that we went and looked for that was still alive in our county, we have found them.
That's great.
So,
wow.
Yeah, that one was pretty memorable. That one actually kind of like changed my life a little bit, because it was wild.
Yeah.
So
that's cool. Another question that I have, and from personal experience, and this was, I'm going to say it was 6 or 7 years ago. And again, this is just Stevens County old boy system in place. But I'd received a call from a gal that I knew at dispatch that said there was a missing snowmobiler on Mac Pass up Sherman.
Okay.
Wife had phoned in and said, hubby didn't come in last night, and I'm concerned because he should have been home. So she calls me, just knowing that I snowmobile, essentially, and said, hey, would you mind going and looking for this individual? So would love to. So I grabbed another guy and we went up with our sleds, and I know that area pretty well, spent a lot of time up there. And thankfully she knew where her husband was riding, and it was correct, because I was able to get to that trailhead, and then I saw a single track in. And so I knew that we were, on the right track. Yep. And dude, we kept going, and there was a ton of downfall because it was wet, heavy snow. So a bunch of the dead standing had fallen, and this dude must not have been packing a saw. And you can, like, he's hopping over these logs, and I mean, he had to have been stuck a dozen times where we could see where he was stomping it out. He'd like cross the log, and then his track would slide down, and then he'd be off the trail. And as working in the snow, and it takes a lot of work. Like, snowmobiling takes a lot of energy. Getting unstuck takes twice that energy
or more. Yeah.
And so I brought a saw with me. I brought a chainsaw with me, anticipating that we were going to be doing some cutting, and we did. But after like the 12th one, I was like starting to get a little bit nervous. I was like, this dude definitely probably stayed up here, and I bet he's worked, you know? Yeah. And we get up on top of Mac and then start dropping down, and I can see where he'd slid off the trail next to a big fir tree, and there was a fire there, and it was a chicken shit fire. But we could still see the embers, and I was like, whoa. So homeboy stayed the night, which I've stayed the night 2 or 3 times planned, so I had the right gear. When I backcountry snowmobile in Canada, I carry the basics, but it's light because I don't have the kind of riding I enjoy doing. I don't pack a bunch of overnight gear,
right?
Yep. And so I've never actually tried to stay with what I carry, like on a backcountry mission. it's been fine when I load up my sled and have a good sleeping bag, and it's doable, right? With the right gear, it's not bad. But yeah, this dude looked like he literally just sat next to a fir tree and made it, like I said, kind of a chicken shit fire.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of when I was like, oh man, like, I don't know if this is going to be good or not. You kind of just, that was kind of this weird feeling.
Yep.
And we kept going and going. And I just thought he's going to get tired at some point. And we ended up going all the way over to where then that drops at Alligator, like to Twin Sisters.
Yep.
And he'd actually just pulled into that flat. And there was a group of Colville guys that had come up from the Deadman side. And we all met within 5 minutes. And so the dude was fine. He did stay the night. He wasn't well prepared. He was cold and hungry, and he didn't have the right gear to be out there. Yeah. He was just tough. It's a guy that you and I both know.
Yeah.
And he was just tough. But I guess that was a long way to go. But is there an opportunity, right, where that essentially could be search and rescue call, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But who there has a backcountry snowmobile that can navigate that kind of terrain? So one of the questions I had written down, like, do you guys have a point of contact, like, list of then people you would call if it is something crazy like that?
To some degree.
Yeah.
You can get into the weeds here with like bureaucracy, right?
For sure.
So everybody on our team has had a background check. We've all been vetted for obvious reasons, right? Like, you're looking for a little kid or something, mm-hmm. right? I'll leave it at that. So you start getting into public volunteering. Yes, the answer is yes. And as a matter of fact, I almost called you one day. We were on a search for a missing snowmobiler, and it was right at the point like where, okay, does anybody know anybody that has sleds? And I said, yeah, I do. And Jay was actually just getting ready to dial you up when a border patrolman called in and said, hey, I just found him. So,
oh, wow.
And the way that we would probably work that would be, like, we never ran into it yet necessarily, but the way we would probably work that with is, if let's hypothetically say that you brought your sleds up, right? And we were going to go, it'd be like where I either rode with you or I took a sled with you, or another team member, a team lead or something that we had would go with you. That way you're kind of covered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we deal with spontaneous volunteers on every search.
Gotcha.
And there will be quads, four-wheelers, whatever. And we'll use them for, a spontaneous volunteer is actually a really good resource to have because, like I said, a lot of times we're in half wilderness, half urban. And so they know the area. They know every hidey hole. They know, they know their backyard. So we can really send them out. They also know their neighbors, right? So I'm walking up to go knock on this house, and I don't know who these people are. I don't know, I'm going to always give them the benefit of the doubt, but you don't know. And it could be 2 a.m, right? What happens when you get a knock on the door at 2 a.m? Usually it ain't good, So by having the locals around that can go there and, hey, Jim Bob, like, have you seen Susie Ann, right? Like, yeah, that helps us. And so we'll use them
for sure.
And so, yeah, like there was a time where we almost called you because we needed sleds and we needed them now.
Yeah. The other thing, again, personally speaking, that I've been curious about, and it's a little negligent on my part, but it is what it is. I got into split boarding 3 winters ago. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with the split board?
Mountain.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, it's a snowboard that's split down the middle, and then you can put these climbing skins on the bottom, and then your bindings turn vertical and they act as cross-country skis, and it allows you to ski the backcountry. You can then, traverse your way to the top. It then snaps together as a snowboard and you snowboard down. And I got into that 3 years ago on Sherman, and it's an absolute hoot.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's 2 hours up and it's agonizing for a 5-minute ride down, but it's fresh tracks and you're not dealing with ski lift stuff.
Yep.
I mean, I've really enjoyed it. And being a snowmobiler my whole life, I like that adrenaline thing and being off the beaten path. I never thought I would enjoy the slower pace and the quietness that I get when I split board. It's like just being in the wilderness, it sounds kind of dumb, but it's a little bit more serene,
sure
like you're more engulfed in there, where when you're, pinned to the bars, riding wheelies through the woods, it's like, it's more of this adrenaline thing. but I got hooked on it. And there was the snow hasn't been that good the last 2 winters, but 3 winters ago, I probably did 24 solo trips. And so, I did Sherman Pass, I did Wapaloosa, Barnaby, like I just started hitting all the local peaks. But it was hard to find people to go with. And I never snowmobile solo. I try to really stick to backcountry safety.
Right.
I was kind of at this dilemma though, of like, I needed to get out just for like almost mental health, and like, okay, do I sit on the couch or do I not go? And I'm not saying that I always make the right decision, but in the back of my head, I'm like, man, if just coming down snowboarding normal and I freaking blow my knee out and I'm on Sherman Pass, like, what do I do then?
Yeah.
And so I've done sat phones, I've done the Spot, and now I carry the Garmin InReach.
Sure. Yep,
and so absolutely. I have it synced to my phone. I'm proficient with it in the sense of when I leave, Shada and my dad have the link. And so I set the breadcrumbs for every 5 minutes. So they get a Google Earth and can see where I'm at.
Perfect.
And then the way that it works, I can send them a text that interfaces through the device. And then they can click on that and it gives them my lat long for where I'm at. But reading this device, it has this SOS button. And so you can push and hold that. And when you read the pamphlet, it says that it pages local search and rescue like every 20 minutes with your coordinates until they respond to say that they've got it. But I've never tested that. This is my little insurance policy when I go solo and think, okay, if I'm really dinked up, I'm going to hit this SOS button. But I also know that Garmin's a global company and I'm in Stevens County, so what they put in the pamphlet may not be true. And I've just never tested it, but I'm curious, do you know if I was to hit this button, have you guys messed around with that? Does that get to you?
So I have not. And as far as I know of, we have never had an SOS call off an InReach. But what I would imagine would happen is it would probably go to dispatch. And don't quote me on that.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd have to do some research. And maybe the next time I talk to emergency management or a dispatcher or whatever, I'm going to ask them, and I'll get back to you, and maybe you can bring it up in a
That'd be
later
cool.
podcast.
We should try to test it, or I could give it to you too, and see if we could do a mock. I don't know how that works with dispatch or something, but it'd be neat to know that, because I got Cody Hart's using one now for his hunting, and like now that we have families and stuff, I'm really pushing this for guys that are rolling solo in the woods of like, you need some kind of insurance policy.
So what you just said earlier too is your number one insurance policy is that you let your dad and Shada know where you were going. And the biggest thing there is do not deviate from that schedule unless you tell somebody. Because if we get that call and Jay is talking to Shada and said, well, Josh was going up XYZ, that's where we're going to hit it, and we're going to hit it hard. And so if you deviate from that, then that's going to make it a lot harder for us. But that is the number one piece of information, man. What time did you go, where you were going, and what time you were expected back. So, I mean, we'll have our IC members like Jaya and the head of our IC, Neil, there. They will like sit down and be like, okay, a human walks at this pace. Okay, now we split boarding in the snow. How long, if this is the route that he took, this is where we lost him. Like what time frames, and they'll start really calculating like lost person behavior and dialing it in so that us in the ground, we can get teams out there and start really hammering it, But that piece of information right there is telling somebody where you're going. That's number one.
Yeah, for sure.
So, but yeah, to answer your question, I don't know. I think everybody around here is just starting to catch up with the technology.
Yeah.
So I've never had one.
Yeah.
We've had cell phone pings, being able to having a deputy ping a cell phone and try to get a location that way. So yeah,
it's been awesome for me because I do, when I leave, I do what you just said. And I always have, if you don't hear from me by whatever time it is, then send the people. Mm-hmm. And like when I'm in Canada, I actually then send a list out of people that I know that are sledders that know the area that they could call,
Perfect.
Or whatever.
Perfect.
But this thing has been so rad, dude, because there's been nights where or days where the snow's killer and we want to keep riding. Mm-hmm. So I just send Shada a text and all good, text when I get to the parking lot, and then she can see live time where I'm at. You know, it's great for people that are looking to explore.
So my cousin has a same type, and I think it is through Garmin. I could be wrong, but he has the same type, and he's got a 185 Cessna, and so it'll send breadcrumbs wherever he's flying in case something goes haywire, you know, and goes down or whatever. Search and rescue teams will have a place to look for the crash or the plane or him or whatever the case may be. So the technology is definitely good.
Yeah. The other question I had too was Shadow the last 3 years has got into backpacking in the summer. And so she's done the Kettle Crest Trail from Sherman to Boulder a couple times. And then I forget the loop, but it's up by Sullivan Lake. There's a 2 or 3 day hike up there that she's done. On Sherman specifically, I know that area is designated MA11, which is non-motorized. So it's horseback and foot travel. So say that she's on, you know, top of Wapaloosie, or maybe let's say in the ravine somewhere, and breaks a leg. I'm tracking her because she takes my inReach when she goes on that. Do you know if is there workaround on that? Like how do you get someone out if you can't land a helicopter and you got a hiker with a broken leg and a designated MA11?
So multiple ways. If it's life or limb and we can get a vehicle in there, again, we've never been hit with this, but I would imagine that it would subside and let us go get somebody. The other way is if you can be seen from a helicopter, if we can find them from a helo, then we'll drop. Or are you familiar with a penetrator?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so penetrator on a helicopter is like it's a big chunk of iron, basically, and it looks kind of like a boat anchor, sort of, and it's hooked to a great big winch, and you can send a penetrator down. You know, let's say that she was ambulatory, right? You can send a penetrator down, and you can get on it, and it has a seat that folds out. You can sit on it. They can put a safety strap around you, hug the penetrator, look away, and they'll.
Yeah, so I've seen that on like TV.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's referred to as a penetrator. It's so that you can get through trees and brush. If not, they can drop people down out of a helo and get there and start medical procedures and do an aerial lift with like a litter, right?
Yeah.
Another way is they let us know and we start walking.
Yeah.
And we will go. So something else I wanted to bring up too is you were talking about letting people know where you are, and if I'm not back by this time, I think a lot of people get hesitant too. Like, I'm not going to call because it's probably just down the road.
Yeah.
Or I don't want to call and then him be fine and whatever. Make the call.
Okay.
The sooner, you know, if your person, you know, that you're relying on, if they know your personality and it's like, yeah, this ain't normal, then it's probably not. Right. So make that call and get us moving. And the sooner we can get to you, the better. And then we can start using those assets. So like you said, like Wapaloosie, oh man, we're going to need a helicopter.
Mm-hmm.
So, or like we talked about earlier, hey, I need to get somebody with some horses.
Yeah.
You know,
for sure.
Those are options.
Yeah.
But helo work, we do a lot of helo work.
Kind of off topic. And I don't even remember who brought it up, but I have the lifetime membership to LifeFlight, you know, that you pay for it and whatever. I thought someone told me recently that there's some deal that's happening that now there's another provider. I think it was like Two Bear Air or something.
Yep.
But so if I'm on Wapaloosie and screw up and you guys call a helo and it's Two Bear Air instead of LifeFlight, I'm stuck with the Two Bear Air bill. Can you speak to that at all?
I don't know that much about it, but I do know that Two Bear. So we did a training with LifeFlight last fall, using our equipment onto their helicopters and making sure that all of our equipment will work with them and just subjecting the team to another agency, right? So we know how to work together once we're there. And that was the first time. That was the first time I heard of Two Bear Air, and I guess it's more southern of the state. So this is the second time now that I've heard of Two Bear Air, but I think pretty much mostly everything around here is still LifeFlight.
What if I remember correctly, what the person had told me is that it would, and I haven't looked into this yet, but that it would be smart to carry a policy for both. That like Two Bear Air also has for the $100, you get the thing, and then because that's probably a $30,000, $50,000 bill. I don't even know, but I'm sure it's a lot.
I have an idea, and you're right in the ballpark.
Yeah, for sure. And so I need to look at that because forever it was just understood that it was always going to be life flight. But now with this other outfit, I'll do a little research on that and then maybe report back next time we link up on here or something and see what that is. Because for $100 on your life, like
it's worth it.
It's worth
right?
that.
Don't buy the $10 tournament.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Don't get the plastic one, please.
Yeah. So I can't speak to that because I don't know what was going on. But what was, wasn't there another one like before Life Flight? It was, I don't remember the name of it. Like they phased out or whatever. Life Flight came in, and I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I don't know, man.
And then I've always wondered too in another country, because I spent a lot of time in Canada.
So I got in a snowboarding accident in Canada when I was younger, and I was scared to go to the hospital because I didn't know how insurance worked.
Yeah, I had a buddy, dude. One time we were riding in Castlegar, and it was super cold out. It was sub-zero, and he was side hilling on the side of his snowmobile, and the snow consistency changed, and it threw him around, and he put his knee through the side panel on the clutch side and into the primary clutch going 8,000 RPM, and it ripped it like right to the bone.
Yeah.
And same thing, it wasn't life or limb, but he was bleeding a lot, and he was in shock, and we're 30 miles from the truck, and he was like, dude, I don't want to go to the hospital in Canada. I don't know how it works.
Right.
And at the border, he's like white as a ghost, and they're like, all right, and he's got blood in his boot, and we basically just redneck bandaged him up. This was before I was dialed. And but it was funny. He was like, I'll just 2 hours haul ass, take me to Colville.
Yeah, give me that. That's exactly what we did too.
Yeah.
Exactly what we did.
Because all my Canadian buddies say that, like, we always say must be nice to have free healthcare, and they're like, well, if you get really hurt, we come to the States.
Yeah.
And then you pay for it.
Yeah. And I've had family members, I can vouch for that. Yeah.
That's
if
funny.
It's really bad, they roll up down here.
Yeah. So I think it's worth touching on too real quick, and kind of just shifting directly into the backcountry scene. But there's a lot that an individual can do to be prepared to give them a chance to be found, right? So like you can't plan if you break your leg doing a backcountry elk hunt, but you can plan to give yourself time to then allow those resources to show up to get you out of there. And I think that that's something that's worth talking about, of just basic, 101 for backcountry travel. So like, in your opinion, if you're a backcountry hunter, if you're a hiker, if you're doing split boarding, dirt biking, whatever you're doing, if you're more than 10 miles or 5 miles from the truck, probably a mile, what's your absolute non-negotiables that you should carry on person?
Okay, so we're going to go down a rabbit trail, rabbit hole here. First and foremost, we gotta understand what we're doing, right? Survival and thriving in bushcraft and stuff like that is two separate things. Survival is usually not comfortable. Where you go out with a pack, and I've done this a few times, just go out with a knife and some 550 cord and make it work, right? You're still doing bushcrafty things, right? So to be clear, survival is usually nasty because something put you there, whether it was an injury, whether that car didn't start, whether whatever.
Inclement weather.
XYZ, pick one, right? So the biggest thing, like I said earlier, is letting somebody know where you're at. That is, to me, non-negotiable. Like that is your number one savior. Right.
So effective communication.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Personal communication. Two is, and this isn't going to be romantic at all. It's not going to be the cool, like Bear Grylls stuff or any of that. Everybody gets chalked up on food, man. You can go a long time without food. Most of the people I know have never been hungry a day in their life, truly hungry.
Yeah.
Right. So, but what'll really start depleting you is that right there, water. Like you got to have water. So you can go as light as heavy as you want. I personally, like in my kits, I have a Sawyer water filter system. That's what I use because I can pack it into pack it within itself about that big, about that long. And it works great. I think it's good for like 100,000 gallons or something. It's crazy. All the way down to, man, bleach. You can put bleach in a little tiny bottle and print out a little card. And I don't remember how many drops it is per liter off the top of my head. I got it in a card in my pack, but just simple bleach, shake it and let it set for a half an hour. It's going to be good to drink. Now, the caveat to bleach is if you drink crick water, you're going to get Giardia or Cryptosporidium. Giardia is also known as beaver fever, right? I've had that twice in my life, and I don't recommend it to my worst enemy.
Yeah.
Like, it's horrible. Too much bleach will do the exact same thing. You'll be shooting out of both ends, and it's miserable. So, but it can be done depending on how heavy, how light you want to go. So water is important. A way to build a fire, especially like we've talked a lot about snowboarding, snowmobiling, that stuff. Everybody can build a fire until it's time to build a fire.
Yeah.
Right. And there's no cheating. Cheating is not a thing. You know, I carry in my pickup under the seat, I have a paper Walmart bag, and it's clear full of cedar shavings and pitch, and I refer to it as fat wood.
Yeah.
It comes out of pine trees, you know, that turpentine smell.
Yeah.
Packed in there, man, and all I got to do is take a lighter and light that and pile wood on it, and it's gonna go, you know. Or
I carry a propane blowtorch
if you need to. If you need to.
I mean, in my truck, not on my pack.
So another thing that's awesome, man, is a can of sterno.
Mm-hmm.
Just a can of sterno, because you can light that and shove it in the ground and pile stuff on it, and it's gonna burn. And it's gonna burn hot.
And same with like a jet boil,
sure,
right? Yeah.
And we've used stoves to keep people warm a lot. You know, like cover them with a poncho or one of those Mylar space blankets, and put that little burner underneath there. You'll be running out of there in about 2 minutes. Like, it gets hot.
Yeah.
So a way to get heat, right? Hypothermia kills.
Mm-hmm.
And so heat is huge. And so if it's a fire, and I think where a lot of people like get it twisted is, springtime, nice sunny day, you know, maybe 58 degrees or whatever. That is the perfect temperature to get hypothermia.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks, you know, negative, you know, 10 below or 5 below or whatever. It's really not. People get hypothermia all the time, and at baseball games, spring baseball games, and go hypothermic. So heating yourself is good. Clothing choice, that's your first shelter.
Well, and to touch on heating, 2 is 1 and 1 is none.
Absolutely.
For like a fire,
Absolutely.
A lighter, like don't carry just a Bic lighter.
So I even I'll even just show you right here since we're on here. I carry a little ferro rod, man, on my car keys.
For sure.
Just so, and I mean, if there's things, you know, like you can take a pocket knife and get balls of lint off of your jeans or off of cotton clothing and strike it with a ferro rod if need be.
Yeah.
My rule of thumb with fire is three different types of dry tinder that's with you, and 3 ways to start a fire.
Yeah.
My main ways are a ferro rod, lighter number 1.
Yeah.
Ferro rod, and then real matches, not like the little MRE matches, like the stormproof.
Yeah.
You can dip them in water and they'll keep burning matches.
For sure.
And because, you know, you could put those matches anywhere you want, to set fire to them with a lighter if you wanted to, whatever you need to do to get a fire going and get warm.
Yeah.
So yeah, water, warmth, you know, a fire, or at least a way to generate heat to keep hypothermia at bay. And then shelter.
Yeah.
Shelter's your next one. What we're wearing right now is our first form of shelter, right? So after that, it can be as small and light as a Mylar blanket, and when I speak to those, I mean like the real heavy duty ones, not the ones in the little packages, but like the big heavy duty Mylar blankets. Those are awesome,
dude. I tested the little one in the package. And so I snowmobiled into Canada, into this off-grid cabin. It was 20 miles in, and I just wanted to stay the night in it with what I had on my back. And I wasn't that worried about it because there was a wood stove in the cabin. And so I just had my sled gear, this chintzy little Mylar blanket thing and a wood stove, dude, and I froze my ass off in a cabin with a fire. Like the fire burned out every 2 hours, and I ended up I thought I could sleep in just my base layers. Like at midnight, I ended up putting all my gear on, freaking my balaclava, the whole 9 yards, my gloves. And then I'm in that little thing. I ended up ripping it, right? Because my boots were huge. It ripped, whatever. And I'm literally sleeping right next to the fire. And I don't want to be dramatic and be like I was shivering all night, but I wasn't comfortable. I didn't get a bunch of sleep.
Right.
And I was next to a fireplace in a cabin.
Yep.
So I don't carry that anymore.
Yeah. Right. And so that's why I mean, like the big Mylar
I'm carrying
blankets.
a bivvy now with the Mylar blanket, just for the heck of it.
And that's one of my favorite things of choice is the thick Mylar blankets. And the reason it is because you can pop up a lean-to shelter, right? And then put your fire, 3 paces away or whatever from where you're going to sleep, just enough that you're not going to burn your shelter. And all of that heat will reflect off that Mylar and then back on, at a diagonal angle back to your body. And it really does help. And you can get those in, that same color orange as that GPS there. So you can be seen from the air.
That's a good point.
Again, like survival is not comfortable. It's just staying alive. Right. And so like hikers, it's all ultra lightweight, ultra whatever. That's fine. That's well and good. But test your equipment, use it, make sure that, oh man, like I've bought ponchos before for different survival classes before I was in search and rescue that I was teaching. And the very first time you pull it out of the package, just so all the garments rip out of it, it's like, okay, well, not buying that brand again, you know? And so use your equipment, test it, and make sure you're solid. So for a survival standpoint, I think I first heard it from David Canterbury on YouTube, and he talks about the 5 C's, right? And so it's combustion, something to build a fire with, cordage, container, what was the other ones? Cutting tool and cover. So shelter, knife, cordage, a container, and then something for fire. That is a pretty good basis. That really squares away. And what it comes down to those are the 5 things that is the hardest to remake in the wilderness. And so with those, you can make other tools to help you get out, whether that's signaling devices or whatever. And then another big one, and none of these come first, second, or third. Like these are all is a med kit. And I don't mean like go to Walmart and buy a little first aid kit. I mean a trauma kit, a reputable company, North American Rescue or something of that nature. And there is no reason. Like tourniquets were always taboo. Like even as an adult, I remember taking medical classes and they're like, absolutely no tourniquets. Well, then they find out through the global war on terror that guess what? Tourniquets are saving dudes' lives and they're keeping the limb, And so there's companies out now, like I think it's Snake Staff Systems. Have you heard of them? So they make a tourniquet, man, that's tiny. And it is set up kind of like a cat tourniquet. It's got a full windlass, all of that. And you can slip it in a front pocket. So that massive hemorrhage bleeding, that's what's going to kill you first if you get into an accident or something something goes on. And then get things to stop the bleed with, gauze, hemostatic agent packed in that gauze or even just gauze, and then have ways to wrap it and maintain pressure is huge. After that, you start getting into kind of more specialty things, which I'm not going to dive down too far, but like nasopharyngeals, airways. Yeah. That's kind of more at a higher medical level.
The average dude's not doing that.
Yeah, but he could with training, right? And so that's kind of where I'm going next, like chest seals. You bring up chest seals and it's like, oh, well, we're not going to combat or whatever. You don't need a chest seal. We're not being shot at. Well, yeah, take a pine limb to your lung.
Yeah.
Chest seal, right?
Well, and how many hunters shoot themselves?
Dude,
on
I
accident.
know multiple people that have been shot hunting.
Yeah.
And so it's a thing as much as
and carry two of them because there's an entry and an exit wound.
Right. Get things that, and then usually you pack a Mylar blanket, one of those cheap ones you're talking about, in there to just help with hypothermia as that goes on, But the big thing is like you can get all that stuff, but go take a class, go learn how to use it. I mean, man, even there are people who like freak out for me saying this, but if you're not going to go take a class, at least look some stuff on YouTube, man. Like, my kids knew how to put tourniquets on people by the time they were probably 5 or 6. Like they knew how to bust open a cat tourniquet and put it on mom or dad or brother or sister or themselves, and there's tricks and tips on how to put a tourniquet on yourself versus somebody else. So get educated in it, know it. And if you get the opportunity to take a class or anything like that, like do it. Our search and rescue team just got done taking a 2-day wilderness first aid class. We sent it out to Ferry and Ponderay County. We had a pretty good turnout. Actually, class was full. Actually, I think we snuck one other guy in there that was part of Ponderay's team by the end of it. Like, yeah, come on in, Joe, I got enough stuff for him. And that was an awesome class, man. Like I learned stuff in there that I never, I'll tell you, like, are you allergic to bees?
I carry an EpiPen, but I'm not.
Do you know that?
What?
And the reason I say that is,
I guess I don't know that. I mean, I've been stung and I'm okay.
Nothing happens, right? Well, what I found out in this wilderness class is you could get stung in Georgia and be totally allergic to whatever that bee was. And I never knew that.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I've been stung by a million bees. We all have, right? No idea that, I go to Montana and that bee's eating on something else, or there's something else in its chemical makeup or whatever the case may be. And bam, now I'm having an allergic reaction. Like that one got my attention in that class because, it's common out there huckleberry picking or whatever. And boom, you get stung by a bee, right? That one blew me away.
Yeah.
I've never been allergic to bees. It hurts, but other than that, and that's the stuff that you learn in those classes.
Yeah.
Right. And so like EpiPens are huge. Even if it's not for yourself, it could be for somebody else, right? Yeah. So, medical equipment is huge, but letting people know where you're at and having a basic knowledge of what you're doing out there.
Well, I think the thing that really, when I started kind of diving into this world a little bit myself, was the phrase of like, you don't rise to the occasion, you fall to the level of your training.
Exactly.
That one really hit me hard, of saying like, I was a guy that, I've always enjoyed being prepared. Like I'm a little bit OCD of being organized. Like I'm a little bit of, I guess that's not politically correct, but like a gear nerd. I was going to use the other word. But like, I like that stuff. It's fun. But what I've realized the more I've gotten into it, I've done training as well, is it's only a few things and you need to know how to use them well. Like I was a guy that had everything under the sun and not knowing how to really use the things that I would need to use well. And I'm still not saying I'm at that level, but I at least have that understanding with myself, and I've really got to see it in the snowmobile industry. So snowmobilers die every single year in avalanches. Yeah. And I was just very lucky. I started riding avalanche terrain at 15 years old, and we didn't know anything. I was with Mark Messenbrink and Sean Hastings, and those guys were the shit to me. And it was so cool to be able to, they were riding in films and stuff at the time. And I was just like, being able to go up with them was cool. I was very, very fortunate that my dad understood the risk once, 'cause he was going up with us at that time too. And he actually, for me and my friends and our little riding group, had a gal come down from Canada and taught a 2-day avalanche AST1 to us when we were 16 years old.
Awesome.
And so we got the gear, we then got trained on how to use it. But the thing that I see is that, especially in the snowmobile world, you get guys with deep pockets. And so you can go buy the new sled right now and it'll take you places you shouldn't be.
Uh-huh.
And it's probably same thing with firearms. Like you should take some kind of training. Like if you're a guy that's going to say, hey, I feel that I should carry a firearm, you should also be trained to do it, right? Or you're a liability and you need to be an asset. In the snowmobile world, they make these avalanche backpacks.
Yep.
And so you go and do your climb, avalanche breaks, you pull the T-handle and it blows up. Well, what happens is guys wear that like it's a Superman cape. Like they're absolutely invincible. And so they don't do the training. They don't know how to use their transceiver. Their plastics are shovel, or the shovel is plastic.
Lightweight, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
So what people don't understand is that when snow slides, it actually builds friction. And then once it hits the run out and stops, it refreezes. So it's like concrete. So you got a plastic shovel that breaks on your second, and so I just see all of this negligence and I've been guilty of it myself, right? Of like, oh, I have a tourniquet, not understanding the difference between a cat and a soft tee, and a plastic windlass versus an aluminum one,
right.
And the difference in that, and all
and
these.
Do you have children? Will that cat work on your 2-year-old?
For sure. And so I think just with all of these things, like it can seem overwhelming, right? But it's also, I think if we're choosing to live in rural America, if we're choosing to engage in the backcountry, it's like our own personal responsibility and due diligence, to be prepared. And I felt for so long that word prepper got misused. Like I always associated the word prepper with tinfoil hat,
Yeah.
and I don't feel that way anymore. Like I'm prepared, and that gives me a lot of confidence to then go have fun in the backcountry,
right?
And like it was for so long, and really working with the school on the safety thing opened up my eyes to my own program and the flaws that I had. Of I was meeting with these other schools, and I was just so focused on the school shooting thing because it's terrifying. It gives you the lump in your throat. Yeah. I'm talking to other schools and other police departments, and they're like, man, you're way more like apt to get someone hurt in shop class. And if you don't have a tourniquet there and you don't have people trained to stop the bleed, then you are school shooting. Like
sure.
as horrible as they are and as gnarly as they sound, there's way more things. There's a bus coming back from Colfax on 195 on icy roads, that can put. And so then I'm sitting there thinking, well, what's in my truck?
Yep, exactly.
I take my kids to Spokane twice a month, going back and forth or to Canada. And so then I'm having to look in the mirror and saying, well, how am I set up? Like if we get in a car accident and one of my daughters is bleeding, I'm now at the mercy of someone else and I don't have cell phone service.
Yeah.
And so I think I bet if we drove around and just like opened everyone's trunk and looked and said, okay, you have no cell phone service and your kid's bleeding. What do you do?
Yep.
It's probably pretty terrifying.
It is. And like you said, you're going to rise to the occasion, right? Well, unfortunately, that's not the way.
Yeah, I'm going to take my belt off and make a tourniquet.
And so there's funny things about that. Like I worked for a job one time and it was in industry. I'll just leave it there, but no tourniquets. Yeah. And me and a friend of mine who's also on the search and rescue team was like, guys, we gotta have a way to stop this bleeding. Like there's so much stuff in it, rip an arm completely off, and it went full circle in the argument, right? Like no tourniquets because of liability. Well, then it was like, okay, well, hypothetically, if Jim Bob gets his arm ripped off, what do you do? And that was the answer I got. Well, take your belt off or use rags and make a makeshift tourniquet.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it's like beating my head against the wall. Then why not have the proper tool for the job? Mm-hmm. Right. And so, yeah, it was funny. I thought of something. Well, little rabbit hole here. You were talking about like the prepper thing getting misused, right? Remember COVID and the toilet paper?
Oh yeah.
So I've taught in like multiple survival classes, and not once have I ever been like, make sure you bring your toilet paper. That was never like at the top of my list. Dude, people were fighting over that stuff. Yeah. Like it was crazy, And so what you don't know, right? Ignorance. I don't know it all by any means, not even close, but I try to educate myself to the best of my abilities.
Well, and to that point, like there's really, with the modern technological world that we're living in, there's no excuse not to. Yeah. Like there's so much valuable resources on YouTube. There are trainings being put on within 80 miles of here monthly if you want to seek that out, and it's cost effective. Like when you look at, to say I have to spend maybe $250 tops to get a decent trauma kit. Like that's on the high end. That's totally worth it when you're in the shit, when that moment happens.
The way that I look at it is hypothetically, right? Somebody puts a gun to your head, give me $250. Yeah. You would hand that over all day, every day, right? Well, that tourniquet or that gauze or whatever, or that, and something else where people get hung up too. And I'm going to chew some ass here a little bit, if that's all right. But people do not like paying for training. They don't like to get trained. Like they'll watch something on YouTube or whatever, and that's good. I commend them for that. Like, do it. But you just bought, we'll use firearms. That's a perfect example, right? You just went out and bought the new coolest Glock or the new coolest SIG or whatever, and all these personal defense rounds and all of that. And you go out to Bisbee or wherever, and you shoot your paper target and you put it in your waistband holster and you step off, right? Okay. Like, I'm glad you got out and shot your firearm. I'm glad you used it. You bought a reputable brand. You did your due diligence and what you need to do. But don't you think you should learn how? Learn a draw, learn sight picture, learn. Well, the best way to do that is in a class. And so you spend $1,000 getting kitted up because you're going to carry concealed now, right? But you won't spend $250 for a class. Yeah. Like, to me, it's lunacy.
I think it's hard if I then push back on that a little bit to actually then find the good training.
It is.
And that doesn't mean that that's an excuse. Because you will then it'll become apparent once you kind of get into it. But I took a wilderness first aid in Montana and it was a joke.
Was it?
Yeah. I mean,
too bad.
It was still worth it. Like, you always get a nugget, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But it was, and I think it was an ARI sponsored course. And it was classroom, and it was supposed to be 1 day classroom, 1 day field. The field was the hallway of the classroom because it was like inclement weather outside, and people were like, it's cold. And like I said, it was worthwhile, but for the time investment and the money investment, I was like, I wish and I guess if I'm taking ownership, I could have done due diligence and researched the course more, and maybe that's the point that I'm trying to make is like, if you are going to make that investment, do a little due diligence and make sure that it's the fit. Because I've taken firearms and first aid trainings both that you're like trying to stay awake, and doing the thing. And then I've also taken ones that were absolutely life-changing for me, and I would have paid double or triple for what I walked away with after 2 days.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I think that goes with anything, right? Like, if you're going to take a guided hunting trip or you're going to get that firearms training or medical training or whatever the case may be, like it is hard, but like you said, this day and age, open a computer, open that phone that we're all addicted to, like, you can look around. They're out there. And really what gets me, man, is like, our area, there is not a lot for any of it, right? Like medical or the ambulance shack, they put on CPR classes and things of that sort, but go try to find a wilderness first aid class. Yeah. It's hard to do.
For sure.
So I agree fully.
Well, and then I think too that we're building a pie, right? Like, there's training that you pay for. There's information that you learn the internet or from conversations with people that know more than you. But then there's this other thing that, I've been trying to touch on lately and many others, but the personal responsibility thing of like, just be an asset, and physically, I remember I did a firearms training once, and I had only trained with walk up to the line, slowly pull out, shoot a paper target. And then I attended another one where it was like, do 10 burpees and then, present and shoot while moving. Yeah. And dude, I was in no shape to do 10 burpees. And so then, and then I'm like, can't breathe and, this whole thing. Sure. And so I think that there's, and I'm sure there's some people listening like, oh my God, these, hardcore or whatever, but there's just a balance there. Like, I think we got to get back to a little bit of like, we've been so dependent. And then I think that's created complacency. Like, we've been so fortunate, I think, in our lives and in this area, like, we really haven't got to experience, and I hope we never do, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Ever. Like, any kind of big level turmoil, but that does just by nature create complacency. And complacency really does then kill. Yeah. And so it's just trying to find that middle ground. And I think that's what's cool in the power of these conversations. Like, I'm seeing it in our generation, man. Like, I'm feeling the change with the men that you and I know of saying, like, what we used to value is almost a term that I now call false masculinity. My truck's bigger than your truck. I got with this many girls, the whole my dad can beat up your dad philosophy thing. Like, we put a lot of stake in that for a long time.
Sure.
And now I'm feeling this shift of like this personal responsibility and wanting to give back and be an asset, and that's an empowering thing, for anyone listening. Like, if you can just do a self audit, and I'm not saying beat yourself up, and then, self-deprecate, but like, be an asset to your family, be an asset to your community, be an asset to yourself, and there's,
and sometimes that self-audit is hard.
It's really hard, man.
Right.
It's so hard.
But it's got to be done.
Yeah.
You need to, like I said at the very beginning of this, you need to manage you first, then manage your family, then manage your friends, then manage your community. Right. And sometimes, like the friend thing, sometimes it's really hard. Like, maybe your friend drinks too much, or maybe they use other substances or whatever. As harsh as this is, man, sometimes you just got to cut it. You got to cut that out of your life. If you're moving in a different direction, well, that goes for the candy bars too, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes you got to self audit and just be like, I think I'm going to eat a salad as much as I hate this.
For sure. Yeah.
But no, and it's all good things. And yeah, to make that clear, like, I don't, just so everybody doesn't get it weird here. Like, we're not saying go out and be John Wick. Like, that's not what we were referring to with the firearms training. It's just, I think there's a false sense of security there.
But also don't think that you're John Wick.
Right. But get trained, like that GPS I'm looking at right there. You could hand that to somebody, they won't even know how to turn it on, right? You've had to train yourself to learn how to use the ins and outs of that GPS, and do you have it set on lat long? Do you have it set on MGRS, UTM, what works for you? What works for the people that you ride with? Well,
then I have to train them, because if I go down and I do it, during our beacon checks and everything, I pull this out, it's located in my handlebar bag, it's on. You have to peel this off. It prompts you twice. You click the check button, because it doesn't do any good if now I'm the one bleeding.
Yeah.
And can't use it.
Right. You might be, And so, like, going full circle here, like back to search and rescue, that's one thing. We have, we call them SMEs or SMEs, subject matter experts. And like me and another guy on the team, shout out to Marty Shaw, I guess. We are kind of the survival SMEs, right? So when the radio guy's talking, I shut the hell up and listen. Like, I don't know it all about radios. I know just enough to get me in trouble, right? Or when our medical SME is talking, when she's giving a presentation, I shut the hell up and listen and be humbled, by what's going on and do that. Crime scene identification. Like, that's not high speed. That's not cool at all, but it's something you need to know. You don't want to walk into a crime scene and then next thing you know, you're in a courtroom. Like, well, why was your DNA there?
Yeah.
Well, I was a searcher. Well, whatever the case may be. So humble yourself and go into it. And that's one of the biggest things that I've learned over time is just shut the hell up and listen sometimes, like, even if you take that little nugget, at least you got something out of it, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
So kind of bringing it back full circle, if people are listening or if they know people that want to get involved in the search and rescue program, point them that direction.
So you can get online on the county's website, and I think it's under the Department of Emergency Management.
That'd be Google Stevens County website.
Stevens County.
Yep.
And through there, I think it's under DEM, Department of Emergency Management. There'll be us, the dive team, and Aries, which is a radio club for emergencies. You can go in there, and we have a brochure in there that will give you all the information you need to join. But for the most part, we meet it's the first month of every Thursday at the ambulance shack there in Colville at 6 p.m. And we do a training for the first hour and then meeting business the second hour. And there's some FEMA courses you'll have to take.
Okay, that was my next question.
Yep. So there is some schoolwork that's got to be done. You got to be up to snuff with FEMA and background check through the county. Make sure you're square on that. And then we have a core competencies packet that you'll just chip away and work on. And there's everything that involves search and rescue in there. And you'll get trained on all of it, survival, medical, crime scene identification, search techniques, helicopters, the list goes on. And once you've did that, we'll sign off on you. And then you can get your DEM, your county ID card, and you're a county volunteer at that point.
Cool. So anyone interested, that's the route to check it out. And I think too, just like I said, kind of as we're wrapping up here and in closing, I believe that we have great EMS here. Like we have good people here, right?
For sure.
And I think we're very lucky to have them on all capacities. Search and rescue, the ambulance shack, dispatch, sheriff deputies, city cop. It's good here. It's not perfect.
And a lot of people don't realize that a lot of those are volunteer.
Yeah.
Or you might get a stipend or something very small for hours worked, but you're not going to make a living off it. Most of the people that are going to show up when you're having your worst day are volunteers.
For sure.
So.
But what I want to say with that is we have good people, we have good things in place, but the reality is we are still very limited in numbers, right? And so it's important. The reason that I say this is that it's important to realize, I think I'm going to misquote this, but just generally speaking, we have a ambulance or two to cover 80 square miles, right? And so that goes back to the be an asset thing, so if there is anything maybe to really write home, I think there's two big things. One, if you can get involved, come check out search and rescue. If that's not your thing, cool. Adam said at the beginning of this, coach your daughter's volleyball team, right? Right. So I think that's one of the big messages. I think the other one too, though, is, and we've chosen to live in small rural America, and we need to be able to help each other, right? I mean, how many times have we pulled up to someone broke down on the side of the road, and being prepared, you're then able to be an asset and help them out. And so if you're hearing this and saying, hey, I take 4 or 5 kids to a basketball tournament every weekend, have a tourniquet, please. And I'm not, again, shooting on anyone, but just use that in the back of your brain that if you're in hunters with limited cell phone service and you hit a deer, which is very likely, you're not going to see anyone for a couple hours.
Right. It could be.
And that's just the reality of where we live. So I know that I've been in my life, like at times too dependent on, I have a cell phone, I'll call 911.
Sure. We all have.
And we have great 911 and we have great people here, but it's still important for people to understand that it's a limited capacity. And with that, we should then be prepared individually in ourselves to be able to address some of those smaller things, right?
You are your first responder.
Yeah.
No matter what it is, no matter what the incident is, you pick up that phone and dial 911. It's going to take time. So you are your first responder, always.
For sure.
But yeah, great people. We've worked with different fire agencies. We've worked with the ambulance, obviously, sheriff's deputies, the dive team, all of them. And they're all great people and they're all there for the right reasons. And yeah, it starts with your community.
Yep.
In my opinion. It starts with your community and then it goes from there. Yeah. Try to do good things and sometimes people will give you pushback or whatever. Hit it at a different angle.
Yeah. For sure. People can also tune in to the Facebook page if they want to see what you guys are doing. It seems like you guys post pictures after trainings and keep updates and stuff. So if you're curious of what's going on, like I said, I checked it out this morning and I found it was really interesting. It was cool to see the pictures and see some of the gear, and stuff in person and see what it was. Anything else you want to plug before we wrap up?
I don't think so, man. I think we've pretty well hit on it. Like I said, everybody gets weird about like preparing, right? That's the crazy person tinfoil hat term, but it doesn't have to be crazy. It can just be that IFAC, individual first aid kit in your car and some road flares and jumper cables, man. Like that's a start. That's where you start. And then if you're into split boarding, throw some stuff to make a fire in your pocket, maybe carry a smaller first aid kit on you and stuff just to get you out of a pinch till that help can show up. It's not crazy.
Yeah.
You think about our forefathers, they did it all the time.
Yeah.
They always had stuff that, this will work for that or whatever, a contingency plan, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, you don't got to get weird about it. It doesn't got to be crazy. But yeah, I get a lot of joy out of helping my community. I get a lot of joy from surrounding myself with people that make me better.
Yeah.
And that's another huge thing that we didn't really touch on that much, but I've learned so much from this group of people that I work with, and I wouldn't trade any of them. Our search and rescue team is some of the most dedicated. I don't even know the words, man. I mean, motivated, dedicated, and just ready to go. Every one of them has a backpack packed in their house right now for when that phone goes off, and they're going to go. Like, I love surrounding myself with that kind of people because it makes me better, and it makes me accountable to myself and accountable to them. And yeah.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming in. More than that, I appreciate your time with search and rescue. I got a lot of value out of learning more about this program, but like, man, thank you to you and your wife for getting involved in that and sharing this message. And, it's great work that you guys are doing. And, our community definitely, is fortunate to have that. So thanks for coming on. Look forward to doing it again. Let's get together 4 or 5 months from now and see if you got any good news stories or,
cool beans, man.
Anything to check out. But cool. Well, that's it. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.